Nuggets podcast where everyone's wearing P9600s?
P600s, or P6000s.
Okay.
I don't know. They feel like clouds on my feet, though.
Okay.
My new favorite Nike silhouette.
Not an advertisement for Nike, but me and you wearing a lot of tennis stuff. It's the French Open. We're both wearing tennis. We wore the same exact thing, really. For those who aren't watching on YouTube, that Aniello's wearing a tennis shirt. I'm wearing a tennis shirt. We're both wearing the same pair of Nikes in different colors. Anyway, he's Aniello Piro. I'm Jake Shapiro. And today on the Mile High Hoops podcast, we are going to be talking about 6 different questions the Nuggets need to answer about their roster this offseason. We talked about David Adelman. Should the Nuggets hire him? And then the Nuggets hired him, and then we broke down the hiring last Thursday, so go check out those podcasts. Now we're finally getting into the roster, the juicy stuff a lot of you guys want to talk about. Instantly, everyone gets in the trade machine as soon as a team loses, sometimes before teams lose, and they say, let's trade Michael Porter Jr. for this, let's trade Michael Porter Jr. for that.
They ain't trading Michael Porter Jr., folks, unless I should rephrase. They're not going to trade Michael Porter Jr. in a deal in which Nuggets fans are going to feel happy about. I'll put it that way. I just don't think he carries enough weight as an asset to get something really positive in return.
Yes.
That's where we're at with Michael Porter Jr.
But my first big question to you is if they were trading Michael Porter Jr., if they were trade anyone, what's the biggest need for the Nuggets? Like, what are their actual needs? Because I think a lot of us are kind of crossed on what this team needs and how they can improve, where they need to improve. There's an argument to be made they should make their strengths stronger and forego their weaknesses altogether. I think they do need to shore up some weaknesses, and I've got a list, but I'm curious as to know where your needs are.
I think when it comes down to me of like what do they need, like obviously I'd love, a second running mate for Nikola Jokic that's consistent, and we don't have to have the Jamal Murray conversation right now, but I just think that would really just help take a lot of weight off of his shoulders. But you're talking about, foregoing what they need to kind of play to their strengths and whatnot. I still want to see them up their three-point shooting as a whole and their shooting as a whole, not just from beyond the arc. So I think it's a combination of players that can shoot the three and play defense at a high level. They're called 3-and-D guys for a reason. We know where they're kind of at limited-wise with their resources and who they can and can't get in free agency or via trade. But I like to see Denver getting back to the way that they were playing basketball a couple of years ago where you had a KCP on the outside. I know Bruce Brown wasn't like a true shooting threat, but he could hold his own at times as well. So I just want to see a tale as old as time surround Nikola Jokic with as many shooters as possible.
I think that makes Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic's two-man game so much better, too, because it gives them the space to operate, AP, and having those three-point shooters and the defenders around them takes so much tax off them. I think that's something we saw during the 2023 season. So for me, my number one need for the Nuggets this offseason is shooting. I'm completely in line with you. This team did not shoot enough. They shot 100 fewer three-pointers than any other team in the league. They didn't shoot it at a good enough rate, I thought, throughout the course of the playoffs. It was okay-ish. Wasn't as bad as Oklahoma City, who just chucks them up there. But they need to shoot them at a better rate. They need to be more threats out there. A lot of the Nuggets' threes that they were taking and making were wide open as well. So if Jamal Murray is a little bit worse and is being guarded, maybe those three-point shots aren't as open because teams aren't, having to make the bet of, we got to leave a guy open because Jamal is so dangerous. So I think that they need some serious three-point shooting threats would be my number one need. I'm with you. But my second need, it's not actually defense. Defense wasn't on the top of my list, which is funny to say about a team that we both agree on struggles defensively. My secondary need for the Nuggets is depth. They just need more bodies. They need more legs. And I think that's something that will allow them to play better defense because they will have more energy. And to me, defense is about two different things in the NBA. It's either about skill or hustle. And you can do one or the other and get there really good defensively. To me, hustle is such an important thing, and having more bodies and ability to go deeper will get your legs fresher and will allow you to hustle.
Well, Russell Westbrook hustles.
We'll talk about that. So hustle is my number two thing. But then I've got some other ancillary needs. 3, I think they need to become a better rebounding team. I just don't think they're a good enough rebounding team. And then you kind of hinted on it with Jamal Murray a little bit. People will say they need a better second star or whatever. To me, it's actually more simple. I would look at it more broadly as they need more shot creation or ball skills. They need more playmaking skills on the ball. They don't have enough ball handlers. Maybe it doesn't need to look like a Bones Highlander or a Jamal Crawford or a Lou Williams. Maybe it can look more like something like Monte Morris or a Tyus Jones, where they're more of a handler of the ball and they smooth passage it over to the guy. But they need more people they can trust handling the ball. So those are my 4 big needs for the Nuggets this offseason.
Yeah, and let's kind of work in reverse because I want to have the big picture conversation because my number one thing, and it was more so the question of like who's putting this roster together, and I think what we're talking about all kind of feeds into that. But the one thing that I think is a question that they need to answer is, do they want Jamal Murray, kind of feeding what you just talked off about, do they want Jamal Murray to be the primary ball handler with the bench unit? Or do they want to go out there and get a legitimate point guard that when Murray's out of the game, or even when Murray's in the game, can help run the show offensively and allow Jamal to play a different type of way? Because I think Jamal Murray as a ball handler with the second unit is fine. Like, I don't think he's like terrible. I don't think he's great. So that's just one area of improvement where like I'm thinking of, okay, if we are keeping the band back together, right? MPJ, Jamal, Joker, AG, Christian Braun, the whole nine. How can we make that band sound so much better? And I think having a new, what do they call it, a conductor to help run the offense
the
there
maestro.
with the second unit, I think that could really just help in upping the ante for Jamal Murray in his play. So I'm looking for them to answer the question of if they do want another ball handler to run the second unit, and then from there we could ask who is that player.
Yeah, and I think it makes Nikola Jokic better as well because he does so much of the playmaking and so much responsibility. So I think taking some of the pressure off, and we already talked about them not playing more than 65 games. So to me,
Joker should have like a 5-ish minute stretch a game where he like doesn't have to be the wizard, like
right.
where he can just play center. You know,
well,
like,
and they used to have that with Monte Morris,
right? And so it's like, look, he's the best player in the league. Like, that's not going to change. The offense is always going to run through Nikola Jokic. But, like, this past season, and really even the year prior as well, everything just seems so, I don't want to say forced, but, like, it had to go through Nikola because there was nobody else to pick up the slack. So I would just like to see them get that second ball handler just to, not just Nikola, but Jamal and, you know, the rest of the roster. Everyone can kind of exhale a little bit and get, like, another pro in the room, for lack of a better phrase.
So for you, number one is shooting. Number two is more
ball handling.
So what's three
specifically with the second unit?
Okay, so you don't necessarily need another star to come in here and be that ball handler. You are fine if they get, let's just say, a taller Monte Morris.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think I say that because I'm off the notion of they're running it back for the most part. Like,
right.
I don't see any big roster configuration happening this offseason. So I'm like, okay, we know that when they're healthy and they're ready to go, the Nuggets starting five with Christian Braun is still one of, if not the best starting five in the league. So I'm like, how do we pick up the slack when they're not in the game or when they're kind of, you know, slicing and dicing with 2 in, 2 out, however it might be?
So what's your third?
The tale is old as time, brother. We ever going to figure out this backup center situation? We going to figure out any depth for Nikola Jokic? But no, in all seriousness, it feeds into what you're talking about. They just need bodies. And maybe those bodies, what do they have, 6 or 7 players that rarely play with guaranteed roster spots? Zeke Naji, Hunter Tyson,
Dario
Jalen Pickett.
Saric, Vlatko Čančar, DeAndre Jordan.
Vlatko's coming off the books.
Yeah, so is DeAndre.
So is DeAndre. We'll see what happens with Dario. We'll see what happens with Russ as well. But it's funny that they had Isaiah Hartenstein at one point, and they just weren't able to figure it out with him.
But to me, that makes me think the Nuggets could go out and acquire legitimately an all-star caliber, like an all-star, but is just playing a backup center, and he could stink because they had Isaiah Hartenstein and he stunk.
Yeah.
So what does it like? What maybe to me, maybe this is the David Adelman thing. Maybe David Adelman runs a different offense with the second unit or does something drastically different with the second unit. Because I did feel at times, and I know this isn't true, but I did feel at times that Michael Malone ran a scheme with the second unit that was out there to either not lose or not cost them games instead of actually doing things that made them success.
Tom Thibodeau-esque.
So, yeah, I'm with you. I think a backup center would be nice, but I don't really know.
Well, and here's the thing, bringing it back to Adelman here compared to Malone for just a second. Michael Malone grasped at Nikola Jokic like he was his safety blanket. Like if Nikola was not in the game, like I would not want to know what the internal monologue was in Michael Malone's head. Maybe David Adelman, if he was the head coach when they had an Isaiah Hartenstein or insert new player here, has a little bit more of that foresight and a little bit more willingness to give that guy running. And going back to the point that you and I made last week of let's not focus on winning 60-plus games. Let's focus on being a 4 or 5 seed and being healthy come playoff time. And I actually heard this take on national sports talk radio. I think it was yesterday. And because what did Indiana finish the regular season? How many wins?
I think they
high 40s?
No, they had 50. They had the same record.
They
had
got
the same
50?
record as the Nuggets.
Right. So the way that this host framed it, I forget who it was, so apologies, but it was on Sirius XM, is sometimes the regular season isn't always about wins and losses. It's about learning and repetition and practicing the moments that you're inevitably going to face in the playoffs. And like that was just something that stuck with me because you and I are both in agreement in the sense of the Nuggets are who the Nuggets are. Like, they've been there, they've climbed the mountaintop, they know what it takes to win an NBA championship. It's the nuance in between that they now need to work on. And I think it's a combination of a handful of different things with depth, coaching change, culture change, everything along those lines. That the way that I'm looking at it is, if they're going to run it back, how do we fill in the gaps that were so wide for this team last season? I think there's a couple different answers there.
Okay. So what's your top goals? We haven't discussed these questions back and forth. We're shooting blind. So what's your number one question?
Mine was the shooting overall. I think you just need to, like, how are you going to surround Nikola?
So how do you get more shooting?
Yeah. Scoring, but in particular with the jump shot.
Luke Kennard, mid-level exception. That to me.
And then what happens to Bruce Brown? Because a lot of people, myself included, kind of think that's going to happen.
You hope he signs for the minimum? Goes from $20 million to 2 a year?
I've been around Bruce a little bit, man. Like, not enough. Like, he's not my friend or anything like that, but, like, Bruce likes his money. I do think that Bruce...
Who doesn't?
I don't think Bruce would be insulted by the vet minimum, but I do think Bruce, with his agent in his ear saying, hey, you can sign the exact same deal that you signed with Denver a few years ago. Would you want that? And I'm sure in his head the answer to that could probably be yes. I think you could still get him, but I don't know, man. Like, and maybe call him the shiny object. Like, I just think Bruce Brown out there, you got to do whatever you can to bring him back in. I think he just fits the mold and the DNA of this team perfectly.
Okay. I'm with you. I think Bruce Brown is their number one target this offseason. I wouldn't say it's like their biggest need because he doesn't fill it, but he does fill the ball handling need. He gives you more bodies. He gives you some defense.
And just someone that's plug and play. Like, that's everything I just said about Adelman.
And he plays all positions besides center, too.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I put my foot in my mouth when I say that a little bit, but, like, Bruce Brown is, like, the one exception of, like, here's a guy that just knows how to play with everybody already and can do it at a high level. And you and I were talking about they're one player away in the regular season and the playoffs from being a legitimate championship contender. If you put Bruce Brown on the roster, I think there's a good chance they win that series against Oklahoma City.
Here's another name for you. Shot 40% from three last year. Shot 42% for Oklahoma City in limited action last year, so 37% the entire season. He's been a 35% shooter in his NBA career, but again, 40% last year, and he's been a little bit better. Backup ball handler, Trey Mann. Go out and try to give Trey Mann the mid-level exception if Luke Kennard or Bruce Brown doesn't work out. I think that's an interesting one. Another name I think people might be interested in is Gary Harris.
Old pal, what? You can't have two Mr. Nuggets.
You can't have two Mr. Nuggets at once, and also number 14 is in use, is it not, by Deron Holmes.
It's true.
So what do you do with
Gary's
all those?
made a bag.
Gary's right. Gary, not the player he once was, but still a 37% shooter in his career. Last year shot 36%. Year before 37, which exactly what you'd expect, right around his career average. Year before that he shot 43% from three. Still can do some things defensively. His contract is up in Orlando. I think he's going to get the minimum, and they're going to decline that $7.5 million team option. So that's an option. Do you feel good about a Gary Harris reunion, perhaps?
I'm here for it, especially on a minimum, just because, like, and maybe I put too much stock into this myself. I just love guys that have chemistry and have, know how to play with each other already. And I think at a minimum, I mean, look at what they've signed some of these other guys. Like, would you rather have Gary Harris or Russell Westbrook? Put it that way. Would you rather have Gary Harris or DeAndre Jordan?
Right.
Put it that way. To me, the answer is very obvious in that sense.
So this guy isn't a shooter, but he's a scorer. Taylor Horton-Tucker is 30% shooter from three in his career, but he does put the ball in the basket. And like this is the category we're looking at, AP, for minimum contracts. Jayshawn Tate, who's out of the Rockets rotation, he's a 31% career shooter, shot 35% this season in limited action. Those are, to me, like these are the minimum candidates. And we already talked about mid-level exception guys. It's, kind of the Trey Manns, Luke Kennards in the world. So unless you're making a trade, if you're only going the free agency route and you're trying to keep it together, realistically, you're probably not getting the level of shooting that you want back for this Nuggets team to significantly clear the desks, especially for, come playoff time. Who knows if any of these guys are actually going to be playing. So to me, unless you're trading Murray or Porter, you're making moves around the fringes with some guys who have some pretty big deficiencies if they're a good three-point shooter or they have a questionable three-point shot and you need them to be a good three-point shooter.
Well, that's where we're at with just the overall, beggars can't be choosers, for lack of a better phrase, when it comes to the Denver Nuggets. I mean, we know that they have one hand tied behind their back with where they're at roster construction-wise, with the trade assets they have available, draft picks, right? They have, one draft pick available through 2031, I want to say?
So they can actually free up a second and trade two if they change the protections a little bit, but basically they have one tradable first right now.
Right, so again, one hand tied behind the back. Can I throw out the idea that I sent to you on Twitter this morning? I just want to get your take on it.
God.
It's
Yeah.
Paul Pierce's take, so let me put it out this way. He threw out the idea of trading Michael Porter Jr. for DeMar DeRozan. And DeMar DeRozan's a guy who's, 35 years old? I believe he'll be 36 now entering into next season. I know, he's on the back nine of his career, but going back to what I was talking about with Michael Porter Jr., we kind of know who MPJ is, and I think that Michael Porter Jr. has more upside than a guy like DeMar DeRozan, specifically at both points in their career. But I think for 1 year, maybe 2 years, the stabilization and the consistency that you can get from a guy like DeMar DeRozan, not a fantastic three-point shooter, shoots at over 30% for his career, but averages 20 points a game.
No, he doesn't. He shoots exactly 30% in his career. Exactly. Not even a hundredth over.
So 30%. So again, this is not looking at shooting in particular, but I'm talking about scoring. This is a guy
ball handling as well.
Ball handling, second unit. Not that he would play that type of role, but a guy that can put up 20 points a game, because nothing frustrates me more with Michael Porter Jr. than when you have Jamal doing his thing and Joker doing his thing, and you look up and MPJ has 7 points with 2 minutes and 45 seconds left to go in the third quarter, and then doesn't play in the fourth or doesn't play in crunch time. And I like Michael Porter Jr. I do, and I believe you do as well. He's too high or low, and the lows are so low that it feels like it's a detriment to the team with what he's making. That if you can get a guy like DeMar DeRozan, who maybe the ceiling isn't as high, but can give you 20 a night, can play some decent defense for you, and can provide some ball handling for you. That was the one scenario that I was like, you know what? I actually don't know if I hate that.
I hate it.
Tell me.
I love Porter's size. I think that's so important. The spacing. I think Porter does some things defensively that just go completely unnoticed, whether it's the rebounding or the backside rotations. People just make fun of him because he loses guys on backdoor cuts. If you want to make
fun, but it's bad. Like, those result in points, Jake.
You know who loses guys on backdoor cuts way more often? DeMar DeRozan.
But you don't think that DeMar, at the age that he is in his career, comes in here for 1 or 2 years, say I'm playing alongside the best player in the world?
At age 36, I don't know what I'm getting from DeMar DeRozan.
At age 27, I think we know what we have in Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah, and it's
a guy who didn't play in crunch time down the stretch in the championship season.
And how many championships has how many finals has DeMar DeRozan played in?
And how many? But point being, up until he was in Sacramento,
he can't play in the finals either.
Yeah, but he was always the number one on his teams in Chicago and back in the day with Toronto as well. I don't know. All I'm saying is, I look at DeMar DeRozan, and maybe a little bit later on in the career. But
that was 10 years ago in Toronto.
Where was Aaron Gordon at in his career before he came to Denver?
I just think it's a completely different thing. I mean, we've seen DeMar DeRozan in a bunch of different stops be the same guy.
But we never seen him with Jamal and Jokic in that next to him.
Okay, well, you were probably saying that if you were the Kings when you acquired him, and you're like, well, we've never seen him with Sabonis. You were probably saying that if you were the Spurs, and you were saying, well, we've never seen him with Pop. Like, I don't fall for it. I mean, it's 4 less points. It's 4 more points per game for DeMar DeRozan than what MPJ had, at far worse shooting efficiencies than what MPJ does. I mean, DeRozan shoots 3.3 threes a game. Like, that's so bad compared to Porter's 6.4. Like, Porter's a better shooter across the board. And on top of that, AP, DeMar DeRozan had 3.9 rebounds per game last year. Porter's 7 rebounds a night. I think Porter does so many more things for your team. The only way this trade works, in my mind, is you're saving about $10 million on the salary,
which is a big win.
Which is a big win.
Don't underscore that. That's a huge win.
Well, it's a big win if you actually do something and you're not just going to save money. Like, I don't care if the Nuggets save $10 more million and it's against their tax bill. Right. But if the Nuggets, let me put it this way. If the Nuggets can find a way in a trade for DeMar DeRozan to get Keon Ellis, then it's a win.
It's fair.
And that name might not mean anything to you, but Keon Ellis is one of the best defenders in the league, and no one knows it.
No, and a guy who's played really good basketball as well in recent memory, who I think also kind of fits the overall timeline of this team. My point being is, like, all you out there that want LaMelo Ball and Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram, like these big names, like.
Well, let me ask you this then. And DeMar DeRozan's a bigger name than any of them. Right. Arguably, he's a 6-time All-Star.
Right.
This is my second question for you. This is one of my 6 big questions. 6 big questions overall. This is my second for you. If you're the Denver Nuggets this offseason, do you shoot for a star or do you go for depth? If you are the Denver Nuggets, not what you think the Nuggets are going to do.
I'm going for depth, personally, just because I don't know which star is attainable out there that really increases your chances. Like, you have the number one star. Like, it's not like you're star hungry. To me, it's about surrounding Nikola Jokic with the maximum amount of talent possible. And I think Jamal Murray, despite the early season woes, came on strong, just signed a new extension. Like, put that to bed. Like, Jamal Murray is here to stay, love him or hate him, right? And I think that's where it's like, okay, you got your two horses. You've got Joker, you've got Jamal, you've got Aaron Gordon, who signed an extension. We'll see what happens with Christian Braun, but he's all in likelihood going to be back as well. So Michael Porter Jr. is the one guy in that starting five that I'm like, okay, can you trade that out to acquire some depth? Can you trade that out to get a more consistent player? But to answer your question as a whole, with some of the names we threw out there earlier, I think depth, 3-point shooting, defense is the name of the game right now for Denver.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm someone who wants more depth over the star. I just think it makes a lot more sense to get more bodies. I just saw it play out. I think the Nuggets win a playoff series against the best team I've seen in a while if they just have a couple more bodies.
Are you buying this notion of like, oh my gosh, like Denver took Oklahoma City to 7 and like, Minnesota's now down 3-1. Like, are the Nuggets further off than we thought or closer than we thought?
I was at all those games. Yes.
Yeah.
They were so close.
I'm a bit disappointed in Minnesota, to be honest with you. I thought they'd give them a better series.
You're so high on Minnesota. I'm not, because you watch Minnesota play the Nuggets, you get all high and mighty. I watch Minnesota on League Pass blow games all the time.
Yeah,
it's
no, you're right. You're right.
So here,
fair.
So here's the thing, though, with the and again, I just said depth, but I've been beating this drum. There's only one star player I want if I'm the Denver Nuggets, and I'm making this trade, and I'm scared as hell if I'm making this trade. And there's a couple things I'm scared of. One, what happened when the Phoenix Suns were super close after they had a finals run? Right? They took the Denver Nuggets. That was the best team. They took them to 6, and it was close. Next offseason, they panic. They trade Chris Paul. They get Yusuf Nurkic back, and they get Bradley Beal. And it was a disaster from there. What did the Milwaukee Bucks do when they were in the situation the Nuggets are in? They panicked. They traded for the star, Damian Lillard. It's all gone downhill since then, and now they don't even have a chance of winning with the third best player in the league. If you're the Denver Nuggets, if you're going to do the panic trade, if you're going to trade for a star, I want Zion Williamson. And people are going to freak out because he only played 29 games or 30 games last year, and it's the second time in 3 seasons he's only played that many games. But AP, when he plays, oh boy, is he good. And I don't think people realize how good Zion Williamson is. In the league last year, points per minute, went on the floor. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander led the league with 0.96. He won the scoring title. That makes sense. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 0.89. Nikola Jokic, 4th in the league at 0.81. 3rd in the league between Jokic and Antetokounmpo, Zion Williamson at 0.86 points per minute. He is one of the best players in the league when he is on the floor. And if you're going to panic and try and get a player, the Nuggets have limited assets. They're going to need to get a distressed asset. Why are you trading for Zach LaVine? He does nothing better than Jamal Murray. To me, go get Zion Williamson. He's actually an awesome player when he's healthy. You're betting a lot on his health, but at least you know he is one of the best players in the league. Granted, he solves literally none of the issues we just talked about, but he doubles down on your strengths.
Well, and he's a force. Like, that's the thing. When he's healthy, look, and I like Zion. I just think his NBA saga has been a bit tumultuous, to put it. Some self-inflicted.
But is that the organization or him,
I think it's a combination of the two. Like, I don't think it's entirely Zion Williamson. But I think the question is with Zion that you have to consider here is, like, the off-the-court stuff. Like, I'm not talking about his personality, but, like, got some good food in Denver. Like where's his head at?
It ain't like the food in New Orleans, brother.
But believe me, I went to New Orleans for the first time for the Super Bowl last year for Media Row. Brother. I sympathize with Zion Williamson because I don't know if I could live in that city and not eat all the delicious food. So, like, let me ask you this then. You talked about Zach LaVine, and what was the hypotheticals thrown out for Zach LaVine? It was Michael Porter Jr. trying to...
What
would it take to get Zion?
Let me give you the Zion trade. Michael Porter Jr., Christian Braun, Deron Holmes, and your 2031 first-round pick for Zion Williamson.
I don't know, man. We don't know what Deron Holmes is yet, and you're giving away a known commodity in Christian Braun, who's been very, very good for you.
And a known commodity in Porter.
Exactly. So you're giving up 2 known commodities, a guy with a ton of upside in Deron Holmes that can solve a lot of the questions that we've been trying to figure out the answer to, and your only real legitimate tradable first-round pick in the next, you and I will be pushing 40, it seems like, by the time we get to, when that all comes back up.
Well, and then
that's a lot to give up for a guy in Zion Williamson with more questions than answers in his NBA career.
But he's the only player on this list that has the potential to one day be better than Jokic. And I'm not saying like better than Jokic right now. I'm saying better than Jokic 3-4 years from now.
I do not hate the thought. I really don't. And call me conservative. I would just rather what we just talked about. You took the Thunder to 7. You're that close.
So you're starting.
I don't know if that's the way to
your
do
starting lineup. If you sign Bruce Brown to the mid-level exception, it's Murray, Brown, Gordon, Williamson, Jokic, with Strother and Watson coming off the bench.
And then I feel like aren't we back in the same problem because Strother and Watson came off the bench last year, and how'd that work out?
So again, I preface this whole thing with I don't want them to trade for the star. I want them to go for depth. In any case that you trade for the star, the depth is going to look like that. So in my mind, the only one that at least I would consider is the Zion trade. Did you have a second question? We got to hit on some of these.
There's a lot of different ones, man. I mean, I think my big thing was we kind of have hit the nail on the head with a lot of things, but like the depth was a huge one for me. So I guess in your mind, if they do go the depth route, and I know that we've listed off a number of different candidates, like is there a number of players you need to see them bring in to fix this depth problem? And I understand that, one player is better than this player. We talked about Gary, we talked about Bruce, but like how many new faces in this building do you think Denver needs to feel comfortable about their depth?
Yeah, I think in my mind, it's quite a few. It's over 4 to 5. It's like 4 to 5 new players. I think what I want to do from this offseason is get 2 to 3 players I feel comfortable with playing in the playoffs. Like, it's nice to have DeAndre Jordan and Vlatko Čančar in case of emergency 15 games in the regular season, but I need 2 to 3 guys that I can play at least like DeLon Wright minutes for the Knicks, like 8 minutes in the playoffs. Even if it's just that, even if it's literally DeLon Wright, like it doesn't need to be that awesome. What Justin Holiday did 2 years ago for the Nuggets.
You love your Justin Holiday.
Dude, he's so good. Like that was, and I was so not on Justin Holiday for most of that season, and then I realized midway through, like, he was so good.
Can I throw out like a random one? And I saw that some of these reports are being debunked, but like if this guy was on the trade market, old pal, your guy, is there any way, shape, or form Denver could get Derek White in here from Boston?
Oh my God.
Is there any way?
If
he is on the market, I know there was rumors about it in Boston saying we're not going to trade him or Jaylen Brown.
I actually have the trade in front of me right now.
I mean, I just think Derek White gives you everything that you're looking for. Hustle, can play defense, can score, can shoot the three. Like Derek White as a player is a dream for this Denver Nuggets team.
So to get Derek White, and this was actually based out of Drew Holiday trade I did on the trade machine, so it'd be a little bit different, and this doesn't exactly work out, but it'd be something like this. Derek White and Cam Johnson to Denver from the Nets.
Another guy that some Nuggets fans were linked to, or the Nuggets were linked to, in Cam Johnson.
Boston gets Nick Claxton, Christian Brown, and Jalen Wilson, Christian Brown's best friend from college. The Brooklyn Nets get Michael Porter Jr., Zeke Naji, Dario Saric, and 2 firsts. I think both Brooklyn and Boston might say no to that. I think Denver probably needs to give up more to get Derek White, because that was actually based off of a Drew Holiday trade I was looking at. Drew Holiday's 10 years older, it'd be a little bit different. But to me, that would be something in the ballpark. But the problem with the Derek White trade is right now it's his absolute peak value. It doesn't make sense to trade for Derek White at his peak value. That's almost one of the reasons why I would rather trade Jamal Murray this offseason than Michael Porter Jr., because you're selling so low on Michael Porter Jr.
The lowest.
When in 12 months, by the way, he'll be an expiring contract and you have 2 tradable first-round picks at that draft night in 12 months. Yeah. So you can trade him in 12 months and get quite the piece back. Whereas Jamal Murray, that contract hasn't kicked in. Nothing's changed, and he looked pretty good in the playoffs, and you could sell a team on it. I think there's between Sacramento, Toronto, Chicago, and Orlando, you could sell them pretty high on Jamal Murray. So I'm not. If you're going to trade one of them, I think I'd lean Jamal, even though I actually like Jamal a lot better, and I'm a Jamal Murray fan. But to me, it makes more sense from like a GM perspective.
I mean, do you see the word soup that Jake and I are having to throw out here just to even fathom a trade of significance? I mean, which is why both of us kind of lean back on, not just because of what we've heard, but also just, looking if the sky is blue. It makes us seem like Denver's going to in all likelihood going to run this thing back for the most part. Like, it just look at the hula hoops you just had to jump through just to even get a trade proposal out there.
It's insane. Do you have a third one? I want to go to your third one before I go to mine.
Yeah, and I think the big thing for me, it kind of brings it back, and I know we've kind of talked about it a ton, but like, who is going to be the person pulling the strings here? Because I heard you earlier today with Dover and Cecil talking about, if they do get a Bob Myers candidate, then everything that you and I just talked about is in play. But if they do stick with a Tommy Balchetis or a Ben Tenzer, also what we've talked about, just in a not as exciting fashion, is going to also be in play. So I think that's my question: is have you learned anything or thought anything differently in the GM vacancy since we last did the pod?
I think that I've put a little bit more stock into the possibility of Bob Myers as the GM of the Denver Nuggets just because the rumor has not died yet. And generally, when a rumor lasts this long, there is some smoke to the fire. And I think if they were going to name Ben or Tommy the GM, it probably would have happened when David was named the coach. So I do think they're still in the search for it. Bob gets paid quite a few bucks by ESPN to stay in that position, at least through the conference finals. So that's part of it. I think that the couple other candidates they're perhaps looking at are still in the conference finals for their teams as well. Again, not as much of a rush for the Nuggets this offseason, especially because they've already hired their coach. So you've already got that conundrum because they don't have a draft pick yet. So I don't think that. And if they're going for Bob Myers, I'll put it this way, they're not concerned about a second-round pick. They're going to be doing other things. Right. So to me, the writing is kind of on the wall that they're hinting at going after a big name like Bob.
Do you think that if Bob was their guy again, tinfoil hat time, you think that comes together in short order once he's done with ESPN?
Yeah, I think that would probably happen within the next 7 to 10 days, if I had to guess. I'm just guessing. Like, this is not sourced information. I do report things on this podcast. This one is not one of those.
No, because like I agree with you. Like, it is interesting that it was just Josh in the press conference, especially knowing that they had hired David Adelman coming into that press conference. So, like, I'm also just maybe still a little thrown off of hiring a head coach before you hire a GM just because traditional wisdom tells me you do it the other way.
Right, but unless you're in a situation like the Broncos are in right now where your GM and your coach report directly to ownership.
Right.
Peyton and Peyton, right? So
put that on a shirt.
But that would lead me to believe it's kind of Tenzer and Adelman, right? Reporting both to Josh.
That's where I'm at. Until I see otherwise with Bob Myers or a big name or, insert high-level executive here, like, I am of the belief that it will be an internal candidate.
That is, I think, the most likely thing to happen. Speaking of the new GM, I think their first big decision is actually this one, and it's not getting talked about enough. Christian Braun is extension eligible this offseason. He is due to be paid one more year on his rookie scale contract, and then going into the 26-27 season is when he will get that extension to kick in. Should the Nuggets extend Christian Braun right now going into next season for the following season, or should they let next year play out, let him hit restricted free agency and see what he gets on the market? That can create quite the tenuous situation between people and parties and all sorts of different things, and it might get a little toxic. And it also threatens Christian maybe playing a lot better and playing himself into a different pay grade. So what are you doing if you're the Denver Nuggets and Christian Braun's, extension eligible?
I think you got the rope. I think you hang on to the rope. I think you roll the dice here a little bit. Just because like also on the personality and ruffling feathers, like Christian doesn't strike me as that type of guy. Like Christian is a very confident person. Like I think Christian in his own, belief knows he's getting paid. Right. And I think if Christian didn't get the extension this offseason, it would only motivate him even more to go out there and get more money, which to your point can then backfire on Denver. But I think Christian Braun can get better. I don't know how much better Christian can get just because he tried to play a little bit of that 3-and-D role, but he's really a slasher and D type of guy, and the defense did improve. But I'm okay with them rolling the dice on that just to preserve the flexibility.
So Bobby Marks projected,
especially if you're thinking about trading him. That's the other thing.
Right. Trading him will be much easier if you haven't extended him.
Exactly.
Bobby Marks projects that he's going to be due to be paid $30 million, which seems absurd, especially when Aaron Gordon's going to make just about that much money the same offseason. The cap is raising by 10%, and I think it's key to look at this. So Christian and KCP, I would say, are about similar players at this point in their career in terms of value.
Fair.
Right?
Ish, yeah.
Yeah.
I think people would value Christian for different reasons they'd value KCP. But
yeah, overall, probably the sum is about the same. KCP's first year of his contract last year with Orlando was 16% of the cap. Christian's first year of his contract on that new deal, if he's paid $30 million, would be 16% of the cap. So $30 million is the new $22 million. So that's part of why this looks so bad is the cap is going up so much because of the new TV deal. But I'm with you, AP. I think I'm rolling the dice because you get players through the draft to be cost controlled. Why not see how cost controlled you can make it? And at very worst, you can trade Christian Braun next offseason if you were not able to come to a deal and he's a restricted free agent and he's still going to have a lot of value if that's the case, and you will hold his rights if you trade for him. So to me, I'm rolling the dice. I'm letting this thing go out to the next season because I'm the Denver Nuggets, and I've gotten in the business of committing money too early to a lot of guys, and it's come back to bite me a little bit with Michael Porter Jr., although, it has come back to reward myself with Aaron Gordon, who took a team-friendly deal.
Well, and that's a great point that you make, because when Denver signed Jamal Murray to the first extension, when they signed Michael Porter Jr. to the extension, when they traded for Aaron Gordon, the Nuggets were a team on the rise. They were ascending. Denver's now ascending, but not at the rate and projecting where they were at that time. Like, they're a team that's, flying in flying range, right? It's a matter of adding a piece here, a piece there that's going to elevate you that little bit to get you back to the mountaintop. It's not like you're at the base of the mountain right now. And that's where I think having that financial flexibility with a guy like Christian Braun in the scenario that he's in, I think is just key to preserving the different types of moves that you may or may not be able to make when you need to make them. Because like we've talked about, Denver's a player away. They're 2 players away, right? If you sign these guys to these extensions, you're going to lock yourself in. I mean, you've seen them kind of screw themselves over a little bit with some of these rookies that they've signed to guaranteed contracts that are taking up these roster spots right now. So I just think with where Denver was at, Jamal and PJ trading for Gordon, absolutely positively the right moves. From where they're at right now, you've got to adjust and preserve that flexibility and build around Nikola Jokic any way possible.
It's also where the CBA is at versus where the CBA is at now.
Yep.
And I'll put it this way.
Heads up.
Second apron, he did. Pointed that out. I was hoping people would notice that one. The first year of Christian Braun's deal, it's the last year of Porter's deal. Aaron Gordon's extension kicks in that year. Right now, Denver's $26 million below the second apron without Christian Braun. And that's without most of their roster even signed, because most of those guys aren't. So the Nuggets are up against a rock and a hard place, and I think they're just gunning to be in the second apron. Not this next season, but the season after. So that's something to watch for when we talk about this offseason with the Denver Nuggets. We will be back on Thursday here on the Mile High Hoops podcast. He's Aniello Piro. I'm Jake Shapiro. Hopefully we answered some of your questions. We've got a million more as this offseason develops, and we'll be talking to you about all of them here on the Mile High Hoops podcast. So make sure you like and subscribe on Denver Sports on YouTube.